Teacher fails girl for her accent, unaware of her father's influence. Have you ever been judged for something you can't change about yourself? Something as fundamental as the way you speak? Imagine how it feels to be overlooked and dismissed because of your accent, despite having the ability to succeed and excel. This is the story of a young girl who was punished for her accent, but when her teacher learned who her father was, everything changed. Stay with me as we uncover how one teacher's narrow view led to a dramatic twist that no one could have predicted. It was a quiet Monday morning at Meadowbrook High School. The school bell rang sharply, signaling the start of a new week. The hallways, filled with students hurrying to their classrooms, echoed with the usual hum of excited chatter. Among the crowd, a young girl named Layla walked slowly to her English class, her heart beating fast in her chest. She had been dreading this day for weeks, but she knew she couldn't avoid it any longer. Layla had always been different from her classmates. She had grown up in a small town overseas, speaking a language that most of her peers didn't understand. Her family had moved to the United States only a few months earlier, and although Layla had learned English quickly, her accent still lingered, something that set her apart in a way that made her feel self-conscious. Today was the day of her English presentation, and although she had worked tirelessly on her project, she couldn't shake the anxiety that gripped her. She knew that her accent would be the first thing her teacher would notice, and she feared it would overshadow her hard work. As she entered the classroom, she took her seat in the back, hoping to avoid attention. Her classmates were busy chatting, some glancing at her with curiosity, others just going about their own business. Layla sat down, pulling her notes from her bag, mentally preparing for the challenge ahead. Miss Harper, the English teacher, was standing in front of the class, preparing to call on students for their presentations. Miss Harper was a no-nonsense teacher, highly respected but feared by many for her sharp critiques. Layla had heard the rumors about her. Miss Harper was known for being tough on students, especially when it came to their presentation skills. But Layla wasn't prepared for what would happen next. As the class began, Miss Harper called on several students to present their projects. One by one, they stood up confidently, delivering their speeches without hesitation. Their voices rang clear and strong, and Miss Harper nodded approvingly with each student who finished. But when she called Layla's name, the room grew quieter. Layla stood up, clutching her project nervously, and walked to the front of the class. She took a deep breath, hoping to calm the butterflies in her stomach, but her nerves got the better of her. As she began speaking, her voice trembled, and her accent, strong but warm, was immediately noticeable. She stumbled over a few words, but she quickly regained her composure. She had practiced this speech for days, and she was determined to finish strong. But Miss Harper, who had been listening attentively, didn't seem impressed. Her expression was stern, and as Layla continued, she noticed Miss Harper's eyes narrowing. When Layla finished her presentation, she felt the weight of the silence in the room. No one spoke. She looked at Miss Harper, expecting praise or even constructive feedback. Instead, the teacher's voice cut through the tension. "Layla, your presentation lacked clarity," Miss Harper said, her tone cold. "I can barely understand what you're saying with that heavy accent. You've missed key points, and I think your lack of fluency is holding you back. I'm afraid I'll have to mark you down for this." Layla's heart sank. She tried to hold back the tears, but it was hard. She had worked so hard to put this presentation together, and she had put all her energy into overcoming the language barrier. But now, it felt like all her efforts were for nothing. The judgment in Miss Harper's eyes made Layla feel invisible, like nothing she had done mattered. The rest of the class remained silent, and Layla quickly walked back to her seat. Her classmates stared at her, some with pity in their eyes, others with indifference. Layla sat down, fighting to hold back the lump in her throat, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. The days that followed were painful for Layla. She couldn't shake the feeling of injustice. She knew Miss Harper hadn't understood her and hadn't taken the time to consider what she had overcome to get where she was. Every time she spoke in class after that, she felt the weight of Miss Harper's judgment on her shoulders. Her classmates' whispers and sideways glances only made it worse. Despite everything, Layla remained determined to succeed. She spent her evenings practicing her English, speaking in front of the mirror, and working on her pronunciation. She was determined to show Miss Harper, and everyone else, that she could succeed, no matter how difficult the journey was. But nothing seemed to ease the sting of Miss Harper's words. One afternoon, Layla's mother came to the school for a parent-teacher conference. Layla had mentioned the teacher's criticism in passing, but her mother didn't understand the full weight of the situation until she sat down with Miss Harper. Miss Harper, when faced with Layla's mother, initially seemed warm and welcoming, but the moment she began speaking about Layla's progress, her attitude shifted. "Your daughter is bright, but her accent is a barrier to her success," Miss Harper said bluntly. "I worry that she's not able to fully grasp the language in the way that her peers can. It's difficult for her to communicate clearly, which affects her grades." Layla's mother, who had worked hard to support her family and had seen Layla overcome so much, listened in stunned silence. Her heart began to pound in her chest. She knew her daughter's worth, and she knew that Miss Harper's judgment was clouded by a lack of understanding. Layla's mother, a lawyer, was well versed in the importance of fairness and respect, and she wasn't about to let anyone diminish her daughter's abilities. The very next day, Layla's mother arrived at the school in a crisp suit, ready to meet with the principal. What Miss Harper didn't know was that Layla's mother wasn't just a lawyer, she was a highly successful and influential figure in the city. Her work had taken her across the globe, and she had even been involved in cases that made headlines. Her connections ran deep, and her reputation was well known in professional circles. When Miss Harper walked into the principal's office, she was taken aback by the sight of Layla's mother sitting across from the principal. Layla's mother introduced herself with a firm handshake, her voice calm but assertive. "I'm here to discuss my daughter's education," she said, "and I'd like to hear your thoughts on her performance in your class." Miss Harper, now realizing who she was speaking to, suddenly seemed less confident. She faltered for a moment, but then proceeded to explain her concerns about Layla's accent. "While Layla is certainly a bright student, her accent is a significant obstacle," she began, before continuing with her usual criticisms. Layla's mother, however, was not so easily deterred. "I'm sure you can understand that accents don't define intelligence," she said firmly. "My daughter may speak differently than others, but she has worked hard to get where she is. She deserves your support, not your judgment. You're failing to see the bigger picture here." Miss Harper, realizing her error, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She hadn't expected Layla's mother to be so involved or to have so much influence. She had underestimated the depth of the situation. The following week, Layla received an email from Principal Daniels, who had reviewed her case after her mother's visit. The email was a formal apology for the way Miss Harper had treated her, and it included an invitation for Layla to redo her presentation and receive a fair evaluation. Layla stood at the front of the classroom once again, this time with newfound confidence. She spoke clearly, her accent still present but no longer something to be ashamed of. This time, Miss Harper listened closely, taking in every word. The once judgmental teacher now saw Layla for what she truly was, an intelligent, hard-working student with a bright future ahead of her. When Layla finished, there was no silence. The class applauded, and Miss Harper, albeit reluctantly, gave a nod of approval. This story serves as a powerful reminder that we must never judge others based on things they cannot control, whether it's their accent, their background, or their appearance. Layla's journey shows us that everyone has the potential to succeed, no matter the obstacles they face. True success comes not from conforming to societal expectations, but from embracing our individuality and rising above judgment. So, the next time you encounter someone who seems different, remember Layla's story. Don't let an accent, a background, or anything else stand in the way of recognizing their true worth. Everyone deserves a chance to show who they truly are.